Hello everyone, it's Tracy. Welcome back to my channel. Thanks very much for joining me. Today I'm doing the assembly tutorial for the Hobby Trolley. This project has been designed by Nicole Silhouette here on YouTube, and I shall link her YouTube channel in the description box below. This Hobby Trolley is only available as a digital cutting file in Nicole's Etsy store, Nicolespapercrafts, and I shall link that in the description box below. It is not available as a cutting die set. So let's get started. In the digital cutting file, Nicole has clearly labelled all of the pieces, and what I did for the tutorial is I wrote down the names of the pieces onto post-it notes and attached them to the pieces just to make it easier for the tutorial and for you guys. So I'll go through the pieces now with you. So we've got this bottom panel here, and it has its liner piece behind it. And you can see I've gone ahead and folded along the score lines and put double-sided tape onto the glue tabs. So this is that liner piece, it goes on the back like that. It's going to add strength to the bottom of the trolley. Next up we have, this is the back wall, and this is quite a large piece. It's 10 inches in height. And this is why this won't ever be a die set. The pieces are just too large. And it will fold down like so, creating extra strength for the side wall. And the part that folds down, you'll see, has it tapers in, and it's meant to be like that so that when you're gluing these pieces together they don't bunch up. Then we have the side walls, and there's two of those, a left and a right. And the piece that folds down on the side wall is also tapered in because that folds in as well. And I've gone ahead and put double-sided tape on the inside. I did use glue when I made my practice one, but for the tutorial I like to use double-sided tape. It's just a bit easier. This is the front wall, folds down like the other piece, and the inside edges taper in, and it's a little bit shorter too. And Nicole does that on purpose. It's so that when you're putting it together it is easier. This is the lid. Has a fold line there, which I've put double-sided tape on the back, and all these score lines here all get folded, and it helps create that curve. Then we have the first inner wall, and you can see that I'm folding those outwards, and I've got the double-sided tape on the inside there, and that's how that will look. And it'll sit in place like so on the inside of the trolley. And the second inner wall is the same, except it's a little bit taller. That's where you've got the tape or the adhesive. And that will sit there like that. Next up we have the side pockets. That's the top of the side pocket that you lift up and open. Put it on the side so you can see what I mean. And I'm showing you here where I've put the double-sided tape on the glue tabs, and those top two tabs, they don't have tape on them. And it will go together like so. They don't have a back. They will get directly glued to the side of the trolley. And it will look like that. And there's a second one as well. Next up we have the pieces for the handle and the compartment that the straws go into that are attached to the handle. They feed down into the compartment. So the first pieces I'll talk to you about are the compartment pieces, and that's basically just a rectangle box with two holes in the top. So I've gone ahead there and folded along the score lines, put double-sided tape on the glue tabs, and this piece will go together pretty much like this, and that backing piece goes on like so. Then we have these strips here, these rectangle strips with holes in them, and there are 5. But I've actually cut these out twice, so I have 10. And I'll talk a bit about that now. The first lot of 5 that I have, they will be glued on top of each other to make a strong support piece. And that will go inside the handle compartment like so. It's just to give some extra strength for when the straws are inserted, so we don't have tearing And these other 5 pieces, they'll get glued on top of each other to make a thick support piece. I'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. We have these pieces here. They are the outside pieces of the handle. And then we have a lot of these pieces here that have a funny slanted edge there, which is different to those 2 top rounded pieces. And these form the inner part of the handle. And there's about 18 or 19 of these, and they all need to be stacked and glued one on top of each other. And I'm just gathering them together here. If they'd cooperate, and they form this very thick piece, and this forms the inner part of the handle, and these 2 outer sides will go like that, but they get attached to that piece to my left there under my left hand, which I'll talk about that now. So the 2 outer pieces, they will get attached to the glue tabs on this bottom piece. Now with that bottom piece, we do need the 5 strips here that we've glued one on top of each other, and they will go inside like so to form a support for that base piece. You don't want the straws ripping the holes. You're also going to need a couple of paper straws, and I have 2 here, and they form part of the handle, as you'll see later on. And then also for your trolley, you're going to need some small caster wheels. These are the ones that I've used, and I've purchased them locally from a hardware store. Our hardware store here in Australia is called Bunnings, and these were $3.58 for a packet of 4. They're not a very big wheel, they're very small. I'm just showing you here. The wheels I have here, they do not swivel. I could only get this type, so the swivel wheels weren't really available in my hardware store that was small enough. But I think these work just fine. And the measurements of them are, this measurement here is just under 1.5 inches. And this measurement here is about 3/8 of an inch. And the height is around just under 1 inch. And the wheel diameter is just over 1/2 inch. So it's a nice cute little wheel. I'm also using some silver brads to fasten my wheels onto the bottom of my trolley. And I'll show you that a bit later on. So it's time to put this together. So I have the bottom panel here, both pieces, and I'm going to put the liner aside for the time being. Then I'm going to get the back wall and bring that in. And we're going to work with these 2 pieces first. I'm going to remove the backings on the tape on the inside of the back wall and glue that down. Like so. Then I'm going to put the 2 of them in this orientation and glue them together, the glue tab against the flat edge of the bottom panel, taking care to line them up as precisely as I can. So there we've got the bottom and the back wall. Just pressing that down, making sure that that tape's getting a good stick. Then I'm going to bring in the front wall, which is that shorter wall, and I'm going to remove the backings off that inner side so that we can glue this wall down and make it nice and strong. Burnish it, and that's going to get attached to that glue tab like so, but I'll turn it over so that I can see it better. So just removing the backings off the tape on that glue tab and attaching the front wall to it. Just take those post-its away And now you can see this is starting to form shape. So now I have the side walls. I have a left and a right one, so I'm just showing you how they're going to go. And what I did with these two side walls, I marked which one was left and which one was right. As you can see there. And the inner side I marked as well, so that I don't get confused when I go to put it together. And the inner side is that side that has the tapered edges. So I'm just going to remove the backings off the adhesive. And press that down shut. This creates nice strong side walls. Do the same on the other piece. And I do prefer using tape on the tutorials rather than the glue. It doesn't matter which side you work on first, but it's time now to put the sides on. And I'm just going to lay the back wall flat like so and attach the side wall, making sure that the outer side is facing up and the inner side is facing in. Now we're on the inside, and I'm going to flip it around so that the outside of the trolley is facing up towards the camera. Then I'll turn it over. This is the inside now, and that's where you can see the tabs. And we'll put decorator panels over that so you don't see them. So I'm just going to now glue the sides together like so. And then glue the front on. It's not a very hard box part of the trolley to put together. Just making sure that you take your time to line things up properly. You don't want a wonky trolley. And I'm just going in with my burnishing tool and giving all the places that have glued down a bit of a burnish so that the adhesive gets a good stick. Then I'll stick that liner piece down, and that makes the bottom of the trolley strong. Just taking off the backings and sticking that in, and that'll hide those glue tabs. And this is where, when you're using double-sided tape, it's not as easy as using glue, because glue you have the wriggle room. So I've just had to go in a different way there and get that stuck down into place. And give it a good press down. And there's the main part of the hobby trolley. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to make marks now for the wheels. So I'm just going to put them in place. I'm not measuring it, I'm just eyeballing it. You can measure it if you want to. But I do a lot of just eyeballing things and seem to be lucky, so I'll just continue to go with that. So I'm just putting these into position, and I'm going to get my pencil and mark where they're going to go. And you could do this before you put your bottom on if you want to, but it doesn't really matter when you do it. So you can see I'm just working my way around, marking where the holes are in the wheels. Again, I'm just eyeballing it. And then I'm going to take my pokey tool and poke those holes. And these will be the holes that the brads go through. So you do need to be careful when you're poking the holes through that you don't push through the cardboard too much and then bend it. So just take a little bit of care. So that's our holes for the brads done for the wheels, and then we can move on. So it's time now to put these inner walls into place, and you have a couple of options. You can just slide them in now if you like, which is what I'm going to do. Or you can put your designer panels on the inside and then put your inner walls in. But if you put the designer panels on now before you put your walls in, you will see the glue tabs on the finished project. And it's up to you whether you want that or not. I have one of each trolley. I have one where the glue tabs show and one where the glue tabs don't show, and it's up to you, it's personal choice. I'm not bothered by either way, but just wanted to show you have a couple of options. So I'm showing you the option where you can make your own designer paper layers at the end to cover the glue tabs. So at the moment I'm just folding this over and gluing it shut to make that strong first inner wall. And I'll do the same with the second one. The second wall is higher because it sits at the back. Well, it sits at the back of the first one. Just gluing that shut, making sure it's got a good stick. And then I'm going to glue them into the trolley. So that first wall will slide down in like that, and I'm making sure that I'm not covering any of those holes that I just made for the wheels. And you can put these inner walls however distance apart you like. So I'm just sticking that down. The reason why I had a little bit of a cut out there was because my big fat head was in the way. And I don't want you looking at my head. And I probably should have taken the backings off the adhesive before I stuck it in. But you live and learn. And I did do it on the second one. So I'm just getting this first inner dividing wall in first, just taking my time, taking the backings off, lining it up, trying to get it as straight as I can. So once I'm happy with the positioning, I'll push against those glue tabs to get them to stick down. Again, with glue, you have got the wriggle room. So I'll work on the second wall now. I'm going to take all the backings off now before I put it in. And just sliding that down where I think I want it to be. Just hold those glue tabs in whilst I get it into position. And again, my fat head was in the way, because I had to get right over the top of it to make sure it was straight. And you don't need to be looking at the back of my head. So I'm just burnishing those glue tabs down. Sorry that you can't see in, but that's basically what I'm doing. Making sure it's straight before giving it a good burnish. So I'm using my pokey tool there just to unstick it and re-straighten it. And this is our dividing walls done in our little trolley. So I'm just going to skip ahead for a bit now and talk about the designer paper layers. And I have some here. And you can see the designer paper I've chosen. I've got the side pockets here, so I'll put the designer paper layers for that to the side. Also the lid I'll put to the side. I want to talk to you about what I'm doing on the inside. I'm just sticking with white cardstock because I think that's a nice match for that designer paper layer. So this is the handle, so I don't need that at the moment, so I'll just put that aside with the handle pieces. So for the inside of the trolley, I'm doing plain cardstock, and on the outside I'm doing an embossed look. And I'm using an embossing folder from We Are Memory Keepers, and it creates this lovely embossed quilted look. It's actually a basket weave. This embossing folder comes in a pack of 2 from We Are Memory Keepers. Unfortunately, I don't think it's available anymore, but if I can find the link, I'll link it in the description box below. So this is a part in the tutorial where I want to show you how to make your own designer paper layers, and I've actually cut the designer paper layers from the cutting file, and we're going to use those. So I've got the side pieces, the designer papers, and the bottom panel designer paper layer. And what I'm doing here is I'm just put it up against the edge of the hobby trolley and I'm just making marks. You could measure this if you wanted to. Again, I'm just eyeballing this and using the side of the trolley as a guide. Making marks with my pencil, then I'm going to bring in my trimmer and I'm going to trim along those marks that I made. And I've left a little 1/8 of an inch gap, if that, between the marks, so that it's not a tight fit as a designer paper layer. It has a nice gap. So you can use the existing designer paper layers that are in the cutting file and just trim them down. And they will fit nicely on either side of the walls. So I'm just checking to make sure that I'm happy with how that looks, and you can just catch a glimpse there inside, and I'm just going to glue them in. This is where I've changed to glue, and I do use glue for the designer paper layers. So I'm just sticking those inside and they're covering the glue tabs. I thought it was just easier to use the designer paper layers that are already in the cutting file and just trim them. And that way you didn't have to do a lot of different measuring. All the designer paper layers are included in the cutting file, so you don't need to worry about that. So just finishing this last layer, getting that glued in. And then I'll do the same on the other side. So I'm just going to get my piece, I'm going to make sure it's in the right orientation, and I'm going to go to where the walls are and just make little marks either side of the wall with my pencil. And then get my trimmer and trim along those marks. And this was a very easy way to get these designer papers to fit around the walls so that you don't see the tabs. But in my first one, you can see the tabs on the first one that I made. And you can see the pictures of that, or a little video of the first one that I made, on my Instagram, which is TF's Paper Crafts. And I'll link that in the description box below as well. So I'm just going to glue these designer panels in. Just noticed I had to trim one down a little bit, which was no big deal. You want it to have a nice fit so that it covers the glue tab, but it's not a tight fit. So I'm just going to glue them into position. Like so. And the practice trolley I did in peach colours, which turned out quite nice as well. Just getting that last designer paper layer stuck down. So there's our two sides with our designer paper layers in there. I'm happy with how that's looking. Now this bottom panel, you can trim that up as well in pretty much the same way and put them on the bottom, but we won't do that just yet because I don't want to cover up the holes that I made for the brads for the wheels. So we'll put these panels in later, but I'm going to go ahead and do the marks and trim them down now whilst I've got everything out. So they'll actually cover the brads at the end. This will be the last thing that I put into the trolley. So now I'm going to go ahead and put some more designer paper layers into place. I'm doing the sides first. And when you emboss some cardstock to put onto the outside of something, it is a lot more trickier to manoeuvre around because of the embossing. So you do need to use a little bit of extra glue and have a little bit more extra patience, because it can be trickier. The embossing does create extra lumps and bumps. So you can see I'm being a little bit more heavy-handed with the glue. And you have to hold it for a little bit longer for it to take hold. And I did forget about that when I had my brilliant idea of embossing. I forgot that it was going to cause me a little bit of a challenge when I was gluing them on. Just going to glue the front panel in place. But I was very happy with the end result, so a little bit of a challenge sticking them down was worth it. So you do have to hold it for a bit longer for the glue to get hold. So only the designer paper layers on the outside of my trolley have the embossed look. The inside is just plain white cardstock. So I'm just going to go ahead here and glue in the rest of the panels for the inside of the trolley. And these extra panels also give the trolley extra strength. So I'll speed up the footage here whilst I put in the rest of the designer paper layers on the inner and outer parts of the trolley. And all the designer paper layers are all clearly labelled in the cutting file also. Now whilst I've kept my designer paper layers pretty simple and just in the white, you could have different coloured designer paper layers inside your hobby trolley than what's on the outside. That is entirely up to you. I just wanted to keep mine fairly clean and simple because that's my style. So you can just see I'm putting all the designer paper layers in place on the inner part and the outer part of the trolley. This project takes up about 9 sheets of cardstock for the assembly of the trolley, and then you've got your designer paper layers on top of that. So there's my hobby trolley with the inner and outer layers adhered on, except for the bottom, which I'll do that last. So now it's time to put the designer paper layers onto the side pockets. And I'm using my other designer sheet, which is from Kaisercraft, and I believe it's called Amethyst, or it's from the Amethyst collection. So I'm going to put these designer paper layers into place, and I'll speed this footage up as well. The designer paper layers are easy to position onto these pockets. It's very easy to see where they go. And when you're using paper like this, I made sure that the pattern continued when I was sticking them down, so it had more continuity. Then I'm just going to remove the adhesive off the backings of these 2 smaller tabs down the bottom and join the pocket, or make the pocket, I should say. And these pockets don't have a back, they get attached to the side of the trolley, and the trolley becomes the back of the pocket, if that makes sense. So that's the bottom part of the pocket done, and now we'll do the top. This is the part that opens and closes. We'll stick the designer paper layer on. As long as you fold both pieces when you're gluing it down, then it should stay flat and you should be able to fold it. And I'll talk a bit more about that later when we're putting the designer paper layer onto the lid. So that's one pocket done, and I'll do the same with the other pocket, and I'll speed that footage up for you. So you can just see there that I'm going through putting the designer paper layers onto this second pocket. These trolleys are very fun to make. I have 2 and I probably will make more because they would make a good gift for a crafty friend. And all the different ways you could decorate them. There's going to be some amazing ones out there, I'm sure. And if you do make one, don't forget to post it on Nicole's Facebook page called Silhouette Designs by Nicole. And I'll link that in the description box below too. I'm sure everyone will love to see all the different trolleys that are getting made. So I'm just putting this pocket together. And we've got our 2 pockets, and I'll put those aside for the time being. And we're going to work on putting the handle compartment together and putting the handle together as well. So first up, I'm just going to take the adhesive backings off these small tabs at the top where these holes are. Just going to join them and put them in place like so. Then I'm going to get these 5 rectangles with the holes in them, and I'm going to glue them one on top of each other so we have a nice thick piece. And then I'm going to put it into position on top of the holes inside the compartment there, like so. Just going to glue it in there. And this is going to put some added strength for when the straws get put in there. And once this is in place, then we can move on to constructing the rest of this compartment. So I'm going to take the backings off the other small tabs here and join those sides together. And then take these backings off and put the back on. That's not a very hard box to put together. Just take your time and line it up. And that's that done, that's the compartment done. So I'm going to go ahead now and put the designer paper layers in place onto this. I have them here. That's for the top of the handle. So I'm just going to put that into place on like so, and this one's another piece that I embossed. So I'm being a little bit heavy-handed with the glue, and then I'll stick it down into place. And this will require me to hold it for a little bit longer than normal because of the embossing. Just pressing it down. All those raised bits and pieces. Then I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of the designer paper layers onto the compartment. And it's very easy to see where all of the designer paper layers go. And yes, I did just drop that glue side down onto the embossing piece. But that's okay, it wiped away. Luckily the glue dries clear. All these fun things happen to me too. It's just whether I choose to edit it out or not. And that's all the designer paper layers onto that compartment. So I'll put that aside to dry. And I've got the designer paper layers for this small bottom piece of the handle. So I'm just putting that designer paper layer into place. And then I'm going to get these 5 rectangles and I'm going to stack them on top of each other. And these are in the colour of the cardstock that I made the trolley in, so it's not the white. So I'm just stacking these one on top of the other to make a nice thick sturdy piece, and then that will be glued on the inside of this bottom of the handle. And I decided to do it both on this piece and the compartment piece just for extra strength. Now we have these pieces here. There's about 18 or 19 of them. I can't remember which. And I'm going to glue them one on top of each other. And no, I won't punish you for all of them. You can just see I'm gluing the last one into place here. And then I'm going to get the bottom of the handle and I'm going to join the sides onto it, like so. And they are the rounder pieces that are rounder at the top. And they don't have that cutout or that slanted edge piece. Just gluing that into position. Give it a good burnish. And then I'm going to take that really thick piece and I'm going to glue that into position as well on the inside edge there. So that's what I'm doing now. Making sure it's lined up nicely and then closing it up. Making sure I've got enough glue. And this makes a nice, solid, strong handle. There should be still 2 tabs on the ends there. We need those to adhere the designer paper layers. So I'm going to put the designer paper layers on each side of the handle. And these I embossed. Just making sure it gets a good stick. And then there's one more designer paper layer for the handle. It's this really long strip. Now this really long strip is longer than it needs to be, but that's so that you can cut it down yourself. So I'm just putting some double-sided adhesive on the other side. And that gets attached to the glue tabs that are on each end of the handle. I'm just taking the backings off the glue tab, and then I'm going to position this paper layer over the top, sticking it down and pressing firmly as I go. And as I said, it is longer than it needs to be, but then you can just trim it. So I'm just attaching it to the glue tab on the other side. Looking for my scissors, and then I'll just trim it off. And that's our handle. So I went ahead and I put the straws into place for the top of the handle. I did use hot glue, and then they just fed down into the compartment. I did not glue them into the bottom compartment because I want to be able to raise and lower the handle if I want to. So I'm just gluing that into place on the back of the hobby trolley, which I was a bit premature in doing this as I had not stuck the lid on yet, but I still was able to put the lid on without any problems. So I'm just making sure that glue is taking a hold. And if I had any trouble with the glue here, I was going to change to hot glue, but it seemed to adhere well. So now I'm moving on to the lid, and I'm going to put the designer paper layers onto the lid. So I have one layer here. That was an extra one that I cut. I'm just going to put that to the side. I don't need it. And that goes at the top like so. And then I'm putting one each on each side of the lid of these. So as long as you fold along the score lines of both of the pieces, the base piece and the decorator panel, and line them up nicely and put a generous amount of glue where the folds are going to be, you should be able to glue this down and still be able to curve it without the designer paper layer buckling. You just have to take a little bit of care when you're doing it, that's all. Make sure you press it down firmly once it's in place and burnish it well. So I'm looking for my burnisher and then just making sure I burnish it really well, especially where the folds are. And you can see that the paper still folds nicely and it doesn't buckle. Then I'm going to stick the top piece on, putting glue in the same way, getting good coverage and putting a little bit more along those folds so that they adhere down well. And as long as you fold both the designer paper layers and the main piece, they should stick together well without buckling. So I'm just taking my time here, lining it up nicely before committing to gluing it down. Then I'm going to concentrate on that area where the folds are and really press that down, give it a good burnish, especially along there. And then training the paper to curve whilst pressing down at the same time so I don't get any buckling. And it will go on the trolley like so. Yes, the handle's in the way, but not really. I'm going to work around it. So I was a bit premature putting that handle on, but you can put your trolley together in whatever order you like. My tutorials are only a guide. So you can see I'm just pressing that into place, making sure that the lid's on nicely, giving it a press from the inside. Make sure it's getting a good hold. And that everything's looking nice. So I'm going to stick the pockets on now. And again, this is something you could stick on at any time you like. You could do it before you put the lid on. You could do it whenever you want to. I'm putting mine on now. And they're just going to go. I'm just going to eyeball it. I'm not measuring it or anything like that. Just going to stick it into place where I think it looks the best. I was a little concerned that the double-sided tape might not hold because of the embossed decorator panel on the outside. And I thought I might have to change to either glue or hot glue. But it seemed to work well. So I'm just burnishing the glue tab down into place, making sure it's got a good hold. And then I'm going to get the other pocket and put it on the opposite side in the same way. Just eyeballing it, putting it where I think it looks good. Making sure that the sides are straight that I'll be gluing down. It probably would be easier to stick these side pockets on before you put the lid on. And I know when I made the practice one, I probably did everything in a totally different order because I'm not filming myself when I'm making the practice one. So now I'm going to stick the tops of the pockets on, the part that opens and closes. And it's very easy to see where these go, even though you can't really see what I'm doing. I'm just lining up the glue tab where the other two glue tabs are on the sides and just slotting this down into place. You can't really get it wrong. Just pressing down from the inside. And then I'll put the other one on in the same way. I think you can see a little bit more when I do this side. You see there, I'm just sliding it down so that the glue tab here meets the side two glue tabs that hold the sides of the pockets on. It's not very difficult to put these on at all. I'm sort of more fluffing around, making sure that that glue is getting a good hold against the embossed paper on the sides. So there's our little trolley, finished now except for decoration. Oh, and the wheels. So let's put the wheels on. So I've got my wheels here, and what I'm doing here is I'm putting a little bit of double-sided tape onto the surface of the wheel that's going to be against the bottom of the trolley. And I'm not doing that as in I'm not wanting the tape to hold it for eternity. I just want to hold it in place whilst I get the brads on. Otherwise it'll feel like I need 4 hands. So the double-sided tape holds it in place temporarily, like so. And I can then put the brads in place at the same time. So I'm just putting the brads in. I'm not opening them yet. I'm just going to get all the wheels on, put the brads in, and the brads give it a nice finished look, I think. So I'm just pushing the brads through the holes, making sure the wheel's on. But I'll open the split pins once I've got all the wheels on. You could just glue these wheels onto with hot glue, that would work. But I liked the look of the brads. Looked like it was really screwed onto the bottom of the trolley. There we go. And I'll just get this last wheel in place. And then I'll tip it up onto its wheels and go inside and open up the split pins to put those into position, which I didn't film because my big fat head was in the way the whole time. So you don't get to see that. But here's those pieces that I cut earlier. I'm going to take the handle off here so that I can open the lid all the way. And I'm going to stick those designer paper layers on the bottom of the trolley like I said I was going to do earlier. And this covers up those brads. It finishes off the inside of the trolley just nicely. So just finishing off gluing in these layers. Just positioning them and popping them down into place and using my pokey tool to make it a bit straighter. So just whilst I'm gluing down these designer paper layers on the bottom of the hobby trolley here, I just thought I'd like to talk to you about what I'm going to be using for the closures on the lid and the side pockets, and that is small magnets. I prefer to use the small magnets on these sort of things as opposed to Velcro. Velcro for me personally, I find it has too much of a grab and I usually end up tearing whatever I'm trying to open. So that's why I don't use Velcro. But if Velcro is something that you're comfortable using, then by all means use the Velcro. But I use small magnets. I did go to the hardware store and buy some small magnets because I had run out, but they too also had too much of a grab and I wasn't happy with them because they were tearing my project. So I will need to get the other ones that I usually get. So I'm just putting the handle back on here. And this is the hobby trolley, just about finished without the magnets or some decoration. So I'm going to do what I normally do here, and I'm going to stop recording and go off and decorate the hobby trolley because I like to do that without being filmed. So this is what it looks like undecorated, and I'll be back soon to show you what it looks like in the way that I've decorated mine. So here I am, I'm back with my completed decorated hobby trolley. And I love the way this has turned out. These are so my colours. I love purple, it's my favourite colour. And I've decorated with flowers and ribbon and you can see that the wheels work an absolute treat. And you've got the pockets that open. And in the cutting file, Nicole has also got a file folder that you could put in your hobby trolley. It's very easy to put together, it's just one glue tab. I didn't make any for my hobby trolleys, but you totally can if you'd like them for your hobby trolley. And this hobby trolley would make a great gift for a crafty friend, or even for yourself in your own craft room. The other one that I made, the practice one, I do have pictures and a video of that on my Instagram account, and I shall put a link to that in the description box below. So that's my tutorial finished for today. I hope you've enjoyed watching and that you feel inspired to make one of these hobby trolleys. Don't forget to check the description box down below for the links that I've previously mentioned, and if you'd like to subscribe to my YouTube channel, I would really love that too. Thanks very much for watching today. Have a great day, and until next time, it's bye for now.